man. Okay, it's Monday night, so it's Parsha. This week's Parsha is Va'era, the second Parsha in Shmais. Now, Va'era is a continuation of the previous Parsha. At the end of last week's Parsha, bottom line is Hashem sends Moshe Rabbeinu to Paro to get the Jews out of Egypt. And from the time Moshe Rabbeinu comes to try to get the Jews out of Egypt, all he did is he made it worse. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes with the question to Hashem, Lama reisa, lama zeh, why have you made it bad for this nation? Lama zeh shlachtani, why did you send me? Okay, from the time you sent me, all you did is make it worse. God, what are you doing over here? So, the beginning of this part ends up Va'era, and we'll discuss why the name of the parsha is Va'era. Hashem says, I appeared to Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov, and there's different interpretations in what the Rashi says, but the bottom line, Rashi quotes a very interesting thing that Hashem complained to Moshe Rabbeinu, Chaval al-Davdan le-mishtachchen, he says, I miss the old guys. The old guys, Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov never questioned me. I told Avram he's going to have a lot of kids. Then I tell him, take Yitzchak and kill him. Bring him up. Yitzchak had an age. Everybody had problems. Yaakov, they never questioned me. Why are you questioning me? Okay? So before we get into the details, just general points over here. So why is the Sedra called Va'era? Va'era means, that's the first words of the Sedra, but we know the name of the Parsha does not necessarily go by the beginning or the words necessarily at the beginning of the Parsha. Va'era means Re'iyah, seeing. Okay? The whole Parsha is called seeing. Now, as the expression in English, seeing is believing, which means seeing represents believing, which is higher than intellect. Okay? Which means as follows. Hashem's telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you want to understand? Va'era. You have to believe. Stop asking so many questions. Okay? Moshe Rabbeinu, and there's another very, very interesting thing. It says, Va'era al Avram al Yitzchak vel Yaakov. The Pasuk itself says, I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov with the name of Shin Daled Yud, and I never told him the name Yud Kivavki. So Rashi says, listen to this. Rashi says, Va'era. What does Va'era mean? El Ha'avis. I appeared to the patriarchs. Now anybody that reads Chumash sees Eira El Avraham El Yitzchok Vel Yaakov. The pasuk says, I appeared to Avraham, Yitzchok, and Yaakov, which every kid knows are the patriarchs. So what is Rashi coming and telling me over here? Va'era, you should know it's El Ha'avis. Okay?
I didn't fulfill the.
Yeah, but why is Rashi Va'era? The pasuk says to whom he appeared. So now Rashi comes along and says, I want you to know. You know who he appeared? El Ha'avis, to the patriarchs. When the pasuk itself says who he appeared to, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So why does Rashi have to say anything? If Rashi wouldn't say anything, it would be clear who Hashem appeared to. He says Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Why is Rashi adding the word here, Avis? Another question is, we learned this morning in Chassidus, Moshe Rabbeinu asked a legitimate question. Why? Since you told me to go to the Egyptians, all you did was make it worse. He asked a legitimate question. Comes along Hashem and says, hey, the Avis never questioned me. Very nice, but that didn't answer my question. Okay, you tell me, I ask a question. It's like in learning, you have this a lot of times. I'll ask a question in learning, and somebody will tell me, Tosfos asks, or the Rambam asks the question. Very good, but you didn't answer my question. So they asked the question. So Hashem says, Moshe Rabbeinu was asking Hashem a legitimate question. From the time you sent me, you made it worse. So what Hashem says, I missed the old guys. They never asked. He's not answering the question. So the whole thing over here is very difficult to understand. But this is and not only that, we know the rule in Torah is it doesn't even speak negative about non-kosher animals. The Gemara says the expression, Begnus behema tmeya, even in the negativities of non-kosher animals, the Torah doesn't speak. Why is the Torah screaming at Moshe Rabbeinu when he asks a legitimate question? And if Hashem doesn't like the question, why is it still in Torah? The question is still there. Lama reisa lama zeh. Moshe Rabbeinu asked a legitimate question. Hashem screams at him for asking the question. So take out the question. Take it out from the book. Why is Hashem keeping in the book? And he says, but I'm screaming at you anyway. So what does this whole thing mean? So there's a similar story in the Gemara, by the way. When the 10 martyrs were killed at the time of the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, right, they were killed. So the Jews didn't know what's going on. The Jews at that time, you're talking about the Rabbi Akivas, the Rabbi Shmuels, I mean, the greatest leaders. They didn't know what was going on. So Rabbi Shmuel went up to heaven. You know, we said in Yom Kippur, Daven Tir Rabbi Shmuel, Satzme, he went up there. So another version is that when he asked the question, what are you doing? Hashem answered him, Shtoik. Shtoik is not like be quiet. Shtoik means shut up. Shtok. Be quiet, but it's a sharp expression of being quiet. It's like shut up. Kach olah b'machshava. This is what I want to do. And if you keep talking, I'm going to destroy the whole world back to tohu vavohu. Mm-hmm. I mean, what type of response is this from Hashem? I mean, come on, the guy's asking a legitimate question. Do these Rabbi Kiva deserve to be tortured to death? Rabbi Shmuel, I mean, all the great tzaddikim, they deserve to be tortured. And why in the world? It's a legitimate question. So why is Hashem saying kach? And what type of expression is this? Be quiet, and if you don't like what I'm doing, I'm going to make the world back to nothing again. Okay? And another thing which is connected to this, Hashem appears to Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and he says, what name? Bekel Shaddai. Mm-hmm. With the name of Shem. V'shmi Hashem lo nodarti lohem. The name, in other words, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the essential name of Hashem. So he said, I didn't even reveal my essential name, I just revealed with the Shin Daled Yud. Like, how does this whole get into this debate and discussion between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu? The whole discussion doesn't make sense. Okay? But the answer is like this. Moshe Rabbeinu's question is a good question. The question is a question Jews need to ask. When God does seemingly things that don't look good to the Jewish people, of course everything Hashem does is good, but we want open good. You know, we're not tzaddikim that see the hidden good. We want open good. So when a Jew sees that Hashem is doing something bad to the Jewish people, Hashem wants us to scream, Lama ha're'isa lamazar. Why are you doing it?
And then retreat.
Huh?
And then he wants you to retreat?
No, he doesn't want us to retreat. He wants us to say, this is what he says, means, what is, the Gemara says, what does the name Shaddai mean? Shin Daled Yud. What does it mean? So the Gemara says it means, Shin is Sha'amar, that he said, La'olam Dai, enough. It says, what does it mean? When God was creating the world, Hashem said, let there be a world. It just kept expanding. Until finally Hashem said, die. Enough. You know, in Hebrew, die means enough. Shaddai means, let's keep the world in a limited form. Okay? There's two aspects over here. From one side, Hashem wants us to ask the question, Lama ha're'isa lamazeh. From the other side, Hashem wants us simultaneously to understand, Va'era, meaning seeing is believing, we need to believe. Yes, you have to ask the question. The question is a Torah question that you need to ask. At the same time, Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, I created the world, granted, I created the world with Kel Shaddai, which means that he said enough, meaning there is nature that existed until Matan Torah. And I'll explain this in a second. Once Matan Torah came into the world, once Hashem gave the Torah, then the essence of God is down here, and then the world runs completely different. In other words, like this. It says in Chassidus before Hashem gave the Torah to the Jews, Matan Torah, right? The Jews kept Torah. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept Torah. Whether the 12 tribes kept Torah is two opinions in the Medrash. Did they or didn't they keep Torah? But the obvious, even though that's also an argument, but the accepted tradition is that the Avos kept the whole Torah. But when the Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did mitzvahs, the physical object did not become holy. Okay, it says in Zohar that when, in Parsha Vayetze, Yaakov wanted, Lavan said, okay, what's your reward? He said, give me the colored sticks with the sheep and that whole thing, the whole shtick, yeah? So it says in Zohar, that was like us putting on tefillin. Yaakov Avinu putting on the sticks is like us putting on tefillin. Mm-hmm. But the sticks didn't become holy. The sticks did not become holy. When we do a mitzvah, when we do a physical mitzvah, the physical object becomes holy. This paper is holy. Mm-hmm. The tefillin are holy. Sefer Torah is holy. Objects are holy. Because now we're able to have the essence of Hashem that makes the physical world holy. Before Matan Torah, that didn't happen. Okay?
That's why they did the oath on...
That's why they did everything in their own way. That's what he says. I appeared to the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Bekel Shaddai. Meaning with the name of God that says die. Shaddai. Enough. Mean nature, limitation. Ushmi Hashem, the name of Yud Kevavke, which is the supernatural, I never told to them because it was before Matan Torah. So basically what's happening here is like this. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, questions have to be asked. You need to ask questions. But the primary thing is Kabbalah's acceptance of the yoke. This is the way it is. And that's why not Chas v'Shalom, the question is not a question. When they said over there in by the 10 martyrs that were killed, and they said, what's going on? And Hashem said, excuse me again, shut up. And if you keep talking, I'm going to destroy make the world Torah v'Veil. What does that mean? I'm going to make the world the way it was before it existed. There was no Kabbalah soil. There was no questioning. In other words, Hashem's saying, this has to be a paradox of questions, of understanding, and at the same time there has to be blind faith. Which is, if you think about it, it's very difficult. Because, like the 10 martyrs, 10 martyrs are being killed, and these are not low lives that sinned, right? The 10, okay, it was forgiveness for Yosef, the 10 brothers that sold Yosef. Okay, they didn't know that necessarily. But there has to be this paradox. There has to be a paradox. From one side, Hashem wants us to ask a question. The question needs to be a question. At the same time, and this is Hashem's answer to Moshe Rabbeinu. He said he didn't answer the question. So because the Avos didn't question, therefore, what does that answer the question why you made bad to the people? Hashem says, the answer to your question is, you need to have faith. You don't need to understand. You have to ask, you have to try to understand, but that's after you have the fundamental foundation of belief. Now that seemingly is a very difficult thing for a person to accomplish, the paradox of belief and questioning at the same time. That's why Rashi says, Va'era Elah Ha'aves. What happened over here? Moshe Rabbeinu asked the question. Hashem answers him, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Aves had Kabbalah soil. They didn't question. Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, the Aves we know were Chesed, Gevura, Teferes, right? Avram was Ava, Chesed, Yitzchak was Gevura, Yaakov was Rachmanis, Teferes. So they weren't the level of Seichel. They were level of Midas. Midas emotions doesn't have questions, because it's not Seichel. Moshe Rabbeinu is a level of Chochmah and Das. Depends when. Both. But Moshe Rabbeinu is Chochma, Koach Ma, right? Betul v'anachnu ma. So Moshe Rabbeinu is Seichel. Moshe Rabbeinu need to understand. So Hashem said to him, Va'era l'Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. Those of the obvious didn't question. So somebody could come along and think, okay, what does it have to do with me? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were very great people. They were able to accept everything, blind faith. How does it get to me? Well, who says I have that power to overcome this paradox of two opposite things? So Rashi says, Va'era ela oveis. He didn't appear to them as individuals, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, unique tzaddikim. It was Va'era ela ha'oveis. If they are our fathers, we inherit all their powers from them. And that's where Rashi adds ela oveis. Because we asked before, it says Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, what does he have to say ela oveis? It's obvious. Because if just would say Va'era Avram el Yitzchak el Yaakov, somebody can say, okay, they were great, they were able to have intellect with blind faith simultaneously. But we can't. Okay? If we can't, so how said we could do it? So Rashi says what the Hashem is telling him is Eira Ela Avais, meaning the patriarchs as far as our fathers, so we have the koach from them. We inherit their powers from them. If they could do it, we could do it too. Because we're getting it as their inheritance from them. So the ultimate is, what Hashem wants, is don't break nature. Hashem doesn't want the world to go back to nothingness again. Hashem doesn't want us to break nature. Hashem wants us to utilize nature in the service of Hashem. Now, it's a very interesting, and we're learning now about in this parsha about the makos, about miracles. It says, the Gemara says, it's not the Gemara, the Ran says, it means Hashem doesn't do a miracle for no reason. Hashem doesn't like doing miracles, B'chal. He doesn't like doing miracles. If you need it, he'll do it. If it's needed. Why? Hashem created nature and supernatural. Both are equal creations of Hashem. If Hashem created nature and supernatural, that means he wants us to deal with nature and supernatural. Hashem doesn't want us to break nature. Hashem wants us to elevate nature, to make nature supernatural. What does that mean in simple English? Nature, if you think about nature, nature is an unbelievable miracle. Sun comes up in the east, sets in the west. You plant a seed in the ground, it rots, out comes a tree. Childbirth, anything you look at in life, the human body is an unbelievable miracle. Yet we call it nature. Why is it called nature? As Chassidus uses the expression, a constant miracle is called nature. Mm-hmm. A miracle that happens once in a while, like the sea split, okay, it's a big miracle. Hashem made the makos, big miracle. A constant miracle is called nature. That's what it is. So Hashem doesn't want people to break nature. And therefore, halachically, you're not allowed to do mitzvahs with miraculous things. We mentioned the story of the Alter Rebbe doing Kiddush Tavani. He told him to stop the boat, even though he stopped the boat himself. Or all the commentaries asked by Hanukkah, the poskim ask a question, Allah and Hanukkah, how did they light the menorah with miraculous oil? It was miraculous oil. It was enough to burn one day, lit 8 days, right? How are you allowed to light a menorah with miraculous oil? You're not allowed to do mitzvahs with miracles. It's a question that they answer various different answers. But the question is, how are you allowed to do a miracle? How are you allowed to do a mitzvah with miracle? You can't. Hashem created miracle. Nature, Hashem wants nature. Hashem doesn't want a Jew to break nature. Hashem wants a Jew to function with nature. And the Baal Shem Tov's teaching was different than the people up to him in his time. That, for instance, like, their opinion was the body is evil, the body gets in the way of the neshama, and therefore you have to torture the body. You have to fast, you have to not eat, you have to roll naked in an ant hive to get all bitten up, you have to roll naked in the snow, just to get to... No, I'm saying, this is their opinion. You have to torture the body. And the Baal Shem Tov came along based on the pasuk. He says in Parsha Mishpatim, there's a pasuk that says like this: Ki sira chamar seinacha, if you will see the donkey of your enemy, reivetz tachas masoi, struggling under its load, v'chadaltem yazevle, and you might think I don't have to help him because he's my enemy. So it turns out, ozev tazevim, you have to help him. Okay, that's simply what the pasuk means. So the Baal Shem Tov said he learned the pasuk spiritually. Kisira chamor. When you look at chamor, means a donkey, but also means chumriut, lowness, crassness, mundane. He says when you look at your chamor, your body, nefesh habamis, you will see really sonach. It's really your enemy. He's not interested in helping you, not the Yetzer Hara, not the body. So it's a positive. I would think I should not help him. I should break the body, So the pasuk says no. Ozev tazev imei, work with him. Don't break nature, elevate nature. And that's exactly the same thing over here. Hashem says we have to. In this coming to the makkahs now, of the whole purpose of the makkah was to break the evil of Egypt with natural phenomenons. The makkahs were,
That's natural phenomenons?
Yeah. We'll see in a second. Like for instance, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu throughout the Parsha, take the Moshe Rabbeinu had a mata, right? The staff. This staff, by the way, according to tradition in Medrash, from Adam Arishan, and then it went to Noach, and finally it went to Yaakov had it. It was Yaakov's mata, and then it ended up by Yisro. Yisro was one of the advisors of power. Yisro ran away, so Yisro had it, and he stuck it in his backyard. And Tzipora was a very beautiful, holy girl, and she was an eligible bachelorette, right? What do they call it? Whatever. And everybody, so the condition of Yisro was, if you could pull that stick out of the ground, you can have her.
And they got it from Sir Lancelot.
Yeah, the movie, yeah. So what happened was, nobody was able to pull it out of the ground. As soon as Moshe Rabbeinu came there, it jumped out of the ground and landed in the sand. So that was Moshe Rabbeinu's mata. Eventually, the Medrash says it became the Briach HaTichain, the middle pole that held up all the boards of the base of Migdosh. That was mata, Moshe Rabbeinu's mata, that became the snake. All the various different things. So it's a very, very holy mata.
Wow.
But mata represents something which is hard.
What is mata mean?
A staff. But in Hebrew, this mat is a branch, okay? But there's also the word shevet, also is a branch. In Hebrew, in Lashon Kodesh, the difference between a mata and a shevet, both mean branches, by the way. A shevet is still softish, is bendable, and a mata is hard, it's not bendable. And what's interesting, what are the Jews called? 12 Shvatim and 12 Matais. Vaydaber Moshe Rashi HaMatais. The Jewish people are called Mata Ruven, Mata Shimon, right? Shevet Ruven, Shevet Shimon. So it says, why are the Jews called Mata and Shevet? Sometimes you have to be soft, sometimes you have to be hard. But Mata represents power and strength. Why did Hashem always tell Moshe, take your Mata with you? Because the purpose of the Makkos, begin 7 of them are in this week's Parsha, right? The purpose of the Makkah is to break the evil of Pari. And therefore, if you notice the whole Parsha, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu is complaining, he can't speak. Kvapeh, whatever caused it, different opinions. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't talk. So he says, I can't talk unless speaks Parsha, right? So what does Hashem say? Okay, Aaron will be your spokesman. Yet every Makkah, Rashi says in this week's Parsha, whenever Moshe Rabbeinu went to Pari, Moshe Rabbeinu made the speech once, and then Aaron repeated it until Pari got it.
So how did Aaron understand?
This is his brother.
So he was able to talk, but
By Matan Torah he got healed, by the way. But yeah, he was able to talk. Kvat Pad doesn't mean he couldn't talk. He said it wasn't the... He burnt his tongue when he took the coal and the... Okay.
Wasn't Aaron also a Navi?
Aaron was a Navi also.
So he probably...
Yeah, but the question is, the Rebbe asks, if Aaron did all the talking, why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to say it once, even? He said it once, Pari didn't know what he was talking about, so then Aaron had to repeat it. What is the purpose of the Moshe Rabbeinu? I mean, Torah is telling us this. Moshe Rabbeinu said it once, and then Aaron, you say it once, and then Aaron will repeat it. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to say it if Aaron's going to say it anyway? So the answer is, the Makkos had to break the evil, the klipa of Pari. Pari was a very, very powerful evil. It's a very powerful force. Superpower of the world. Pari was the chief, told everybody he's God, he doesn't even have to go to the bathroom. Moshe Rabbeinu used to meet him early in the morning by the Nile. So, only Moshe Rabbeinu can break the klipa of Pari. So Moshe Rabbeinu came with a stick which represents power. Moshe Rabbeinu had to say it once to Pari. Why? Because that broke the klipa. Now Aaron can put it into words that Pari understand. Moshe Rabbeinu had to break this whole klipa of Pari. And that's what he had to do. So let's discuss a little bit some of the Makkos over here, which is very interesting. So is Dam, Tzvadeya, Kin, those beginning, it's some remarkable lessons over here, by the way, in what's called menschlich, being a mensch, being a decent human being. Rashi says, why did Hashem make the Makkos in that order? So Rashi says, in Tachsisi Milchama, in the style of war, first you poison the waters. They don't have what to drink. And then you make a lot of noise. That's dumb.
Sorry, Dave.
And then Tzadeh makes a lot of noise. That's the medrash. That it was actually, again, how to fight Egypt in a way of, that's what you do. But if you look at a deeper sense, I'm not going to go through the Makkah, just one with 2 probably. You have Dam. Yeah, what was the plague of Dam? All the water in Egypt turned to blood. The only water that didn't was the water that the Mitzri bought from the Jew. That the Medrash says, okay? Because there's an interesting thing. I mean, the commentaries that when Hashem went to Moshe Rabbeinu, oh, by the way, just go back a second. That's why another miracle happened over here. Mata represents power. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, if you go to Pari, he's going to ask you, show a miracle. So take the stick, it's going to go to the ground, and then it's going to be a snake. Okay? So what Pari's magicians did it too. Mm-hmm. Then it says, Vayivla mate adin in Perik Zayin Pasuk Yud Beis, Vayivla mate adin es matesim. After they all became back a stick again, okay, then Aaron swallowed their mates. Mm-hmm. Why do you need that? What was that for? It says, Rashi says, after it became a stick, then Aaron's stick swallowed their sticks. Why? Because Mata represents power. It's showing that Aaron, Moshe, the Mata, not only did miracles, but it absorbed, it broke their power, that their power became part of Moshe Rabbeinu's power, so to speak. Okay, but then it says like this. The first Makkah was Dam. Okay? The Yasa came Aaron, everything became blood. Okay? All the water became blood. So it says now, the Yasu ken chatume Mitzrayim beloteim. The Egyptian magicians also made water into blood. So the commentaries say, what water is there? He says, but the Orach Chaim says, Im kain minayim motzu mayim lahofcha l'dam. Where did they get water to turn into blood? The second Egyptian touched the water, it became blood. So how did they get water to turn into blood? So he says probably it was only on the water above the surface. Below the surface, it wasn't. So they got water from below the surface. Some interesting details. But the question is, why was the first, in a spiritual sense, personal sense, why was the first plague Dam? And if the Hashem wanted to, why did the water turn into blood? I once said this in a show years ago. A guy screamed, "No, it could have been mashke. I mean, it could have been scotch. Why did it turn into blood? I mean, like, what's the purpose of it?" So the answer is like this. Water represents coldness. Coldness means, in a spiritual sense, coldness to Yiddishkeit. There is an evil out there called Mitzrayim. This Mitzrayim has, as we learned last week, the boys throw into the Nile, get them into the culture of Egypt, and the girls make them live like, Egyptian girls. The Egyptian evil, the klipa of Mitzrayim that we need to break, by the way, it's a daily, every day we go out of Mitzrayim. Right? It's a daily Mitzrayim that we need to deal with. There is an evil that's coldness to Yiddishkeit. People are cold to Yiddishkeit. Or people out there are very apathetic to Yiddishkeit, cold to Yiddishkeit. So the first thing a Jew needs to know is we have to turn coldness into blood, meaning into warmth, into life. Ki adamu hanefesh. Blood is warm. That's why a living person is warm. That person is cold. A living person is warm because the blood represents warmth. So the first way to fight Klipas Mitzrayim is by turning coldness into warmth of Yiddishkeit. The second makkah was Tzvardeya. What is Tzvardeya? What was the miracle of the Tzvardeya? They went into the ovens. The miracle was, they went into the ovens, and it says that was the Mesiras Nefesh, by the way, of the Tzvardeya, of the frogs. Here.
Why were they so worried about frogs? They're so little kids.
1 minute. So, okay, here it became blood. Okay. Then it's going to say, it says like this. The yard is going to be full of tzvardim, and it's going to be in your houses, in your bedrooms, in your beds, ubetanurecha, in your ovens. Okay? So the Medrash says, what's the inyan of the oven? Oven doesn't mean a cold oven. It means the tzvardeya went into boiling hot ovens. Okay? No, Rashi doesn't say it. Okay, but the other Mefarshim say, Rashi alludes to it earlier. The makkah of tzvardeya, they even went into the ovens. What does that mean? A frog is cold because it's always in the water. An oven is hot. What happens when the tzvardeya goes into the oven? It cools it down. So here, this is the two makkahs, dam and tzvardeya, opposite things. The makkah of blood is transform the coldness of Egypt, meaning evil, klipa, into warmth of blood. And the second way of conquering Egypt is take the enthusiasm of world and cool it down. Just the opposite of what Mitzrayim means. Mitzrayim says, be cold to Yiddishkeit and be warm to world. So these two makkos, Dam and Tzvardeya, means warm up the coldness of the world to Yiddishkeit and take the warmth of the world and cool it down.
You say warmth of the world. You're talking about the evil?
Evil, the warmth, the enthusiasm of evil.
What were the Egyptians, what were they preoccupied with? What is it that they liked? What did they...
Torturing Jews like everybody else does.
Before that, if let's say we weren't there, what were they into?
The Egyptians the Egyptians, it says in the Medrash, the Kabbalah says, the Egyptian people were the most brilliant, cultured civilization in the world. Simultaneously with that, they were the most corrupt.
Like they were the Greeks, but corrupt?
Like the Germans. Every time in history, the Germans were the epitome of science and culture and knowledge, and yet look what Hitler did. The Greeks were the same thing. And in this time, Mitzrayim, in Golis Mitzrayim, the Chachmei Mitzrayim were the most brilliant people.
So is it the same source of klipa that goes from Mitzrayim to Greece to Germany?
All the Golis are interconnected.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
But the source is Greek.
The source is Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is the source of everything. Okay. Then there's another thing here. I wanted to say there's a beautiful lesson here. Rashi says the first three makkos, Dam, Tzvardeya, and Kinim, Aaron did it. When it came to blood, okay. Here. Vayem Hashem al Moshe, when it came to the makkah blood, Emer el Aharon, tell Aaron to hit the river, the Nile, and it's going to turn into blood. Yeah? So Rashi says why? Because the Ya'od, the Nile, protected Moshe Rabbeinu when Yocheved put him into the Nile, not denial. She put him into the Nile. So the Nile protected him. And the same thing he says like this, not Damanoit, not Tzvardeya. Therefore, it was wrong for Moshe Rabbeinu to lack of showing appreciation to the Nile, and therefore Hashem said Aaron should do it. You understand?
I missed what you just said.
Why did Aaron have to do the mark of Dam and Tzvardeya?
It was Karsatov for the month.
Okay, Karsatov for Moshe, for the Nile.
Yeah.
Okay, that means Hashem is showing Karsatov to an inanimate object.
Yes.
Okay. The third marker, Kinim, the lice, Hashem again says to Moshe, and Kinim, the lice came. Rashi says, why again? The earth was not worthy to be hit by Moshe, because when Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Egyptian and buried him in the earth protected Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so listen to this. We're talking about not Hakaras HaTov. You know, Hakaras HaTov in English means appreciation of what somebody does for you.
Recognize somebody.
Yeah, Hakaras HaTov means recognition of that the good somebody did. We're not talking about human beings. We're not even talking about animals. We're talking about the Nile. Because the Nile has absolutely no feelings. It's not a plant, it's not an animal, it's not human, it's inanimate. The Nile has no feelings whatsoever. Yet the Nile protected Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem said, I don't want Moshe Rabbeinu to hit the Nile. The earth protected Moshe Rabbeinu when he killed the Egyptian and Moshe Rabbeinu buried him in the sand over there. It's not befitting for Moshe Rabbeinu to hit the earth. But just think for a second.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but you're talking about dirt. Since when does dirt have any feelings of appreciation?
Oh,
You're gonna make. Let me ask you a question. You go to the earth, you make nice. Okay, so yes, that's exactly the lesson. So how much more so when it comes to somebody does something, and this is a little far-fetched. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Nile protected Moshe Rabbeinu. His mother put him in a basket that was floating in the Nile. Big deal. I mean, the Nile protected him. It took care of him. Then Moshe Rabbeinu buried the mitzvah in the earth. Big deal. But no, Hashem is showing us the Torah is teaching us a very important lesson in appreciation of good that somebody does for you. What?
I miss Sephardia. Why Sephardia not Sephardia?
Oh no, let's also hit the Nile. The Tzvardea came, he told him to hit the Nile.
So both 1 and 2 were the
1 and 2 he hit the Nile.
yeah.
Here, he told Neteas Yaakov ala Naharis al Ye'erim v'lagam, hit the waters, and then the Tzvardea came up. According to the Medrash, one Tzvardea came up, because it says, but one Tzvardea came up. The pasuk says, and then they hit it, and all of a sudden it started multiplying. But it says the Tzvardea, another thing, a lesson, it says, the Medrash says that the Tzvardea, we said before, went into the oven. You know, that's death. It's a death sentence for the Tzvardea, going into a burning oven. We're not talking about a cold oven. Yet, Hashem told him, go. Yeah, granted, they have no free choice. But it shows a lesson that Hashem told them to go, they went. They didn't kvetch. You know, they didn't start saying, oh, I don't want to do it, I can't do it. So, no, it's remarkable, simple lessons the Torah is teaching us through these stories of how a Jew has to show appreciation to somebody. And, you know, another interesting point over here is, let's discuss this first, yeah, okay. There's a very fundamental question.
Why doesn't
What?
Why doesn't Moshe or Aaron, when they have the staff, just kill Pharaoh when they're face to face? I don't understand.
Hashem didn't want them to.
Okay.
The question is the reverse.
Why
didn't Paro kill Moshe and Aaron? That makes more sense.
No, but if Moshe was able to kill the other Egyptian dude.
Moshe Rabbeinu, the question, you know, I really should repeat the question because the people over here on the Zoom told me they don't hear the questions. The question was, why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu just kill Paro? I mean, so I say the question is really reversed. Why didn't Paro just kill Moshe and Aaron? And there's another question. Rashi alludes to that, and Rashi answers it, by the way. It seems that Moshe and Aaron, I mean, if the Jews were slaves, how did Moshe and Aaron just go back and forth whenever they wanted?
Yeah.
So the answer is because Shevet Levi was not enslaved. And that's why, if you notice, the pasuk says in Parsha Shmais, the more they were tortured, the more they multiplied. When you count, later on when they count the Jews, Levi was counted from a month old. All the other tribes were counted from 20 years and up. Okay? Shevet Levi, and Levi had much, 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 much less than the Jews. So the Medrash says why? Because the pasuk says the more they were hit, the more they multiplied. Levi wasn't enslaved. Why? Because Pari understood, interesting, but one part of the nation needs to be freed from the army, freed from service. Pari. There's a bigger question that Chassidus and Kabbalah say it's not a question really, but it's like a wonder. Pari is the epitome of evil. Moshe Rabbeinu is the epitome of Kedusha. And yet Moshe Rabbeinu is standing next to Pari, epitome of Kedusha, epitome of evil, and they're having a discussion. That's even a greater wonder. How is that? Ultimate Kedusha and ultimate evil, There's no way they could have. Paro had guards. I mean, come on. There was no, and Hashem didn't want. By the way, Paro was never killed. Paro was saved from Kriyas Yamsuf. He became the king of Nineveh, that we read about Yom Kippur at Maftayoina, and therefore when Hashem said do tshuva, he knew that Hashem meant business.
Does he maybe symbolize Samach Mem?
Yeah, Samach Mem is Esav. Listen, they're all bad. What's what they represent?
No, how does he not get exterminated?
Because Hashem wanted Paro to remain alive, to be able to tell what really happened. But there's a very famous... What?
Ask a quick question?
Yeah?
Like I'm reading in places like Pirkei Avos that you don't want to be too friendly with people in power. You don't want to even be around them. Like, so how is this all okay with Paro and everything? Like, to be so, in with him?
Okay, first of all, it wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu's choice. Hashem wasn't buddy-buddy with Paro. Number one. Hashem told him, go tell him, hey, I mean business. That's number one. And secondly, you have to remember another thing. Where was Moshe Rabbeinu raised as a baby?
Egypt.
In Paro's house. Right? By the way, it's interesting. I mentioned last time about Paro's daughter was named Basia or Bisya.
Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting. There's a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, for Divrei Hayamim part 1, that says Bisya Bas Paro. And that's where the name Bisya comes from, not Basia. There's a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim that says clearly Bisya Bas Paro. So that's where the name Bisya comes from, not Basia. Anyway, let's get to another very important thing over here. And that is, the whole story of Paro in Egypt doesn't make sense. In a certain way. Why doesn't it make sense? Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu from the get-go, from the start, I'm going to harden the heart of Paro. Mm-hmm. He's not going to listen to you, and then I'm going to beat him up. Mm-hmm. Okay? So let's paraphrase that. I come to you, I tie your hands behind your back, literally, okay? And then I tell you to do something. You can't do it because I tied your hands behind your back, and then I smack you in the face for not doing what I told you to do. I mean, that's not menschlich. That's not decency. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, I am going to harden his heart. He will not listen to you. And then I'm going to punish him.
He's going to be alive.
And the question is,
You're not going to Israel.
Is that tzedek v'yosher? Okay, so there's a number of answers to this question. The simple answer is, by the way, that initially Paro's heart was not hardened. After the first few makas, it's like, I'll tell you something. Somebody who's addicted to whatever, yeah? Once they're addicted, you can't blame them for being addicted. You can blame them for allowing themselves to become addicted when they became addicted, because there was a time they weren't addicted. So they're to blame for allowing themselves to become addicted. Once they're addicted, what are you going to do? Well, they don't have control anymore. So initially, Taka Hashem told them, in the future, I'm going to harden his heart. But really, Hashem didn't harden his heart initially. First, Paro said no on his own, and then said, okay, this is what you're doing already? Now I'm going to take care of it. But there's a very profound meaning over here. The Gemara tells a story. Elisha ben Avuya Acher was the Rebbe of Rab Meir. Rab Meir still learned Torah by him even after he became an Apikoros. Okay, he became a non-believer. And the Chachamim asked Rab Meir, how do you learn from Torah from an Apikoros? He says, I'm capable enough to eat the fruit and spit out the pits. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I know. So, Rab Meir used to follow Acher around and learn Torah from him. The Gemara tells the story, Acher was in Shabbos, Acher was riding a horse on Shabbos, smoking a cigarette, and Rab Meir was running after him. And in the middle, Acher said to him, you can't walk anymore, it's Tchum Shabbos. You know, it's the 2,000 cubits outside of the city, you got to stop where you're going. You go back, I'm going to keep going. So Rab Meir said to Acher, his Rebbe, why don't you do tshuva? Why don't you do tshuva? So Acher answered him, listen to this, because I heard a voice from heaven. Can you imagine? He's an apikar, he heard voices from heaven that said, everybody could do tshuva except Acher. So Acher said to Rav Meir, why in the world should I do tshuva if Hashem says I can't? What was the problem? Even when Hashem says you can't, you could still do it. Ein loch davar she'em b'fnei tshuva. And Alter Rebbe in Tshuva says, even those sins that the Gemara says tshuva doesn't help, it means a lower level of tshuva. But a higher level of tshuva, im dachik ein loch davar, there's nothing that stands in the way of tshuva. So it says like this. Acher's problem was, he could have still done tshuva, if he really wanted. This story that Rebbe spoke about is a phenomenal concept. Even when Hashem says to a person, I'm going to harden your heart, and you're not going to give in, you could still give in. And that's why Pari was punished. Pari was punished that Hashem said, I'm going to harden his heart, he's not going to listen to you. The answer is, why did he punish him? Because the answer is, even when somebody is told by Hashem himself, you cannot do tshuva, you could still do tshuva. Tshuva is higher than anything else, even for when Hashem tells us that you can't. And for that, Pari was punished. Because even when Hashem said no, he could have still done tshuva. There's nothing that stands in the way of tshuva. And that's, by the way, why Pari was punished in that way, completely. Now, there's a difference, the Mefarshim explain, we learn out from Nineveh, by the way, we said, which happened to be Pari, the king of Nineveh, right? He became the king of Nineveh. There was the tshuva of a goy. Nineveh were goyim, they did tshuva, and there's tshuva of a Jew. The Rogat Shavar has a lot on this. What's the difference between tshuva of a goy and tshuva of a Jew? There's two differences. One difference is that the Jew, through tshuva, uproots the sin retroactively. It uproots the sin retroactively. By a guy, they bring the Rogat Shavar brings proof from all over the place. It's only from here onward. Tshuva doesn't undo the past. It just makes you a good person from now on.
For no harm.
Yeah. By a Jew, tshuva undoes the past, uproots the past completely.
Makes it good even.
Yeah. There's a whole thing, I'll say it in a second. Secondly, when a Jew does tshuva, because they uproot the past, they never mention anything about it in Hashem, and God never mentions anything about it anymore. You did tshuva, that's it. Nothing else will be mentioned to you. By a non-Jew, it will still be mentioned. Because it doesn't uproot it, it just makes you a new person from here on, not retroactively. Even in tshuva, there's different levels. There's a level of tshuva. I'll give you an example. The Gemara says, if a man does kedushin with a woman, on a condition. Whether, I'll give you an example. He says, I'm doing kedushin on the condition I have $100. So the din is, even if he has $200, it's still not. Why? You said 100, not 200. 200 is better than 100. Doesn't matter. Whether you tricked him for better or for worse, kedushin, it has to be the condition. If a guy says, on the condition I'm this such and such a person, and he's a worse person, it's not valid kedushin. If it's a better person, it's not a valid kedushin. So the interesting thing, there's a whole argument in the Gemara Brachas. What's better, a tzaddik or a Baal Tshuva? Which one's better? It's two opinions in the Gemara. The Rambam rules that a Baal Tshuva is greater than a tzaddik. So one of the proofs they bring to that, because why did the Rambam rule what he did? Because the din is, the Gemara says, if a guy does Kedusha with a woman, on the condition I'm a tzaddik gamur, I'm a complete tzaddik. Mm-hmm. It's a doubtful Kedushin even if he's a Rashi gamur. Mm-hmm. Even if he's a Rashi gamur, it's a valid Kedusha. Why? Maybe he had a thought of tshuva. And if he had a thought of tshuva, so that proves that a Baal Tshuva is greater than a tzaddik. But the problem with that is, if he's greater than a tzaddik, then it's also not a valid Kedushin. If he says, in the condition I'm a tzaddik, and he ends up to be a Baal Tshuva, so then the Baal Tshuva is also, it's better than being a tzaddik. So the Rebbe explains a lot on this thing, but the bottom line is, there's a level of tshuva that makes you a tzaddik. There's a level about tshuva that makes you greater than a tzaddik. Depends on different levels of tshuva. Tshuva miyira, tshuva out of fear, out of love. There are different levels of tshuva that can create different levels of a person. But the reason why Pari was punished, and this is a very important lesson for us, by the way. The reason why Pari was punished was, even though Hashem said, basically, I'm going to harden your heart, you could still do tshuva. Even if God himself says you could still do it. So a person, therefore, can never come along and say, oh, how am I going to do tshuva? It's impossible.
He had 10 chances.
I'm so down. Yeah, and he still was able to do tshuva.
But he had 10 chances, right?
12. Oh, 10, I'm sorry. 10 plagues, yeah. Yeah.
And they were like...
Pretty serious.
Extremes.
Pretty serious.
Yeah, he should have.
But he didn't.
At that, he never did?
He did eventually. He said he ran away to Nineveh, he did tshuva.
Over there, he was like...
Or even by Makis Becheris, he ran around saying, Hashem HaTzadik v'ani v'amir Hashem. In Parsha's Bay, late next Parsha. He says, God is righteous and me and my nations are wicked. So he did come eventually to do a certain level of tshuva.
And it was accepted?
Yeah, Hashem saved him and sent him to Nineveh.
The story of Nineveh is like 500 years later.
Yeah.
How is he still alive?
No, it's not 500 years. I don't know if it's 500 years later. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. He lived a long time then. One last thing is interesting. In this week's Parsha, it says 4 expressions of redemption. That's why we have 4 cups of wine. Mm-hmm. So the question is that we should have 4 matzahs. Why do we have 3 matzahs and 4 cups of wine? Right? We should have 4 matzahs. You don't have to eat all of them. So one answer is, that's a very simple answer. One of the 4 expressions is v'lakachti. V'lakachti is an expression of redemption, of geula. Matzah is poor man's bread. Heilach ma'anya, matzah is bread of affliction. It's not geula, redemption. Wine is simcha. Wine is the level of redemption. Matzah symbolizes golus. So because you're talking about 4 expressions of geula, so therefore it can't be 4 matzahs, because matzah represents golus and this is wine represents geula. Okay, Mitzvah Shem Wednesday night on Zoom, 8 o'clock. Till then, everybody have a good day.
Thank you. Great class.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Rabbi, when Moshe goes
I can testify Jeffrey was on it.
Rabbi, when Moshe goes to Cush, he becomes a king over there, right?
Yeah.
Does he have children there or no?
No.
But and he won't, and he has a wife there that he
doesn't touch, yeah.
doesn't touch.
Right.
Torah doesn't talk about it.
Medrash does, not... I still don't
Right,
know.
thank you so much for the...
I still don't know how to close this. That's it. I'm leaving it like this. Let them worry about it.
Good night.
Good night.
But how are we supposed to think of Misraim's klipa for our life today?
We got plenty of Mitzrayim Klipa today. First of all, Mitzrayim means limitations. Even in a refined way. Okay, you have to go out of Egypt every day? We speak about the
I work in downtown LA.
No, but I'm saying, how does the tzaddik go out of Mitzrayim?
Okay.
That's it. They're all thousands of limitations.